Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this month's To Catch a Fraudster series. Each month we are dedicated to bringing you up-to-date and essentially fresh perspectives on all things cyber, fraud, technologies, process, procedure, and just insights that we're seeing in real time. And really excited about today because we have some serious horsepower on this webinar, present company excluded. So I'm going to play more of a mediator than anything here. But I want to jump right in by way of housekeeping. Oh, hold on a second. There we go. So we're going to be talking about today technology that's going to enable efficient and secure title operations. So this may be one where you might want to take a few notes because we're going to be diving into more granular conversations and actionable insights than what we may have in the past of more, call it storytelling. So our speakers today, we have Matt Regan, who is the CTO of Fluid. I'll let these guys introduce themselves here in a minute. I will not do it justice. Chris Meyer, who's SVP of Sales at IntelliCheck, and then Sean, who is the CRO of Premier One. I'm sure many of you know Matt and Sean from the title space. I've gotten to know these individuals well over the past few years, Chris more recently, and in their respective domains, they're really passionate and they're curious. And I think when, as a title company owner, you need that type of persona on your team. When we're talking about everything from how do I think about complying with ALTA standards, how do I think about leveling up my standard operating procedure, what's incident response look like in 2024 versus 2023 or 2022. So with that, Matt, I'll let you lead off, maybe quick 60 seconds on yourself.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, everyone. Matt Regan, as Tom mentioned, I'm the CTO of Fluid Software Corporation. I have been building all different kinds of technology in the title and settlement space for 20 years now. Have worked a lot from the kind of the title production system side and really extending the capabilities of the title production system and here at Fluid, we focus a lot on the verification title and extending title data and capabilities to as early in the process of a real estate transaction as possible, and just kind of get excited about how we can use technology to make your lives easier, to add efficiency and really strength to how you participate in the real estate transaction.
Awesome. Matt, thank you. Thanks for the intro. I'll go a step further. Matt's had a history of making title-related software actually work for users. So that's how I would sum up your career, Matt. And you've done it very elegantly, very intentionally.
I appreciate that.
But well done. Chris, tell us about yourself and IntelliCheck, if you don't mind.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Tom. Chris Meyer, SVP of Sales with IntelliCheck. I've been with IntelliCheck in the identity verification space now for 8+ years. As we're an ID validation company, we validate over 100 million IDs a year for most of the large banks in the country, as well as the fintechs, and then every major retailer across the U.S. So what we do, and we do very unique process, is making sure an ID presented is real, genuine. Make sure it belongs to the person presenting it. And then we provide additional fraud and risk scores. Is there anything suspicious, or should you trust doing business with that person now that you know who they really are? So that's really who we are, what we do. This is a space that we've become very excited about because just the amount of fraud that's running rampant in this space right now. And, at the end of the day, we help our customers protect their customers from being victims of identity theft. So appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone today.
No, thanks for being here. And Sean, who, just like Matt, really doesn't need any introduction in the industry. But Sean recently has been attending some conferences, and we'll get into this, I know, Sean, but well, about yourself. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Sean Fox, CRO of Premier One. We are a national MSP with a focus on cybersecurity. A little under 70% of our clients are title companies. Really, over the last few years, things have progressed very rapidly on what the services are that we've provided, and really the security side of it is where we're going to spend most of our time when we talk to clients, just to make sure that they have everything in place that they need to. The idea these days is to stop everything from becoming a systemic event, so just to make sure that we're staying on top of it. But thanks for having me, Tom. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Premier One has grown into probably one of the largest, if not the largest, managed service provider for the title space, as Sean mentioned, and just a deep bench of knowledge and team there. So, all right, please, if you could take a minute, and if you have a question, you have a thought, I always like to ask, why are you here today? So what's one thing when we talk about title efficiency and title production efficiency, identity, issues and validation, to cybersecurity and wire fraud, just put it in the Q&A. I have a panel that will kind of monitor this in real time, and it will influence this conversation. These guys know we don't have anything drafted on this. We're just going to be talking candidly about what we're doing, what we're excited about in the space, and some things and takeaways for you to consider. So please, throw it in the Q&A, and we'll get into that. So, all right, Matt, we're going to talk about the conditions of title. This is the subject matter for today, guys. We're going to talk about conditions of title with Matt. We're going to get into identity and identity authentication with Chris. We're going to have a scary but very enlightening conversation, I already know, with Sean, because I've had it the last several weeks, and want to give you, and I'll kind of wrap up with an update of how the consumer and their expectations are changing around being protected from these types of threats, because there's some insights that we obtained recently in our State of Wire Fraud report. So with that, Matt, let's talk about how the intersection of technology can mitigate title risk, because again, this is the way that we search and examine and prepare the title commitment is incredibly antiquated. Like, you could roll it back almost 100 years, but just not sitting at the county. You're sitting at a desk and you're just going through a different conduit to look at the same, essentially paper recorded documents. So maybe pull us forward from that starting point on where technology sits and what you're excited about at Fluid on how that can help, the industry as a whole.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the right explanation of what what improvement was made over the first 99 years or so of plus of this process, which isn't to say that there weren't efficiencies and improvements, but the heart of what it means to to search and examine title it stayed very similar over much of that time, and we think that there is now the ability to really fundamentally change how that's done against what data sources, how fast it's done, when it's done. Importantly, because of the efficiencies that can exist by virtue of using new data sources, thinking about the data differently, and tying it all together with technology. So when Fluid says verification of title, what we mean is that we like to think about treating title much as lenders think about verification of assets or verification of income, things that can be done more automated, more quickly, with more clarity, and so we've built systems that use not only those traditional data sources, because we very much respect the importance of title and the way title's done and why it's done that way, but mixing those together with new data sources that are available and can be brought together electronically, digitally, to really enhance the process and speed it up and make it cost effective to do as early as possible in the transaction, get that information out to all of the key parties, whether that be the real estate agent right at the time of getting a listing agreement, or the lender right at the time of getting a loan application, and making that data available in an easy to consume format and cost effectively for you, the title agent. And by doing that, really, allowing for visibility and planning ahead. So, when we think about how things have been done traditionally, they are time consuming, and it creates, all the more pressure as you approach the actual closing process. And the more pressure there is, the more of a crucible there is at the closing process, the less kind of capacity you have as an agent to focus on some of the other risks that really attack that kind of really focal point in the process. So we think that by taking advantage of the efficiencies in doing title examination, search and examination more efficiently, to the tune of, within a minute or two of being able to open a file, having title, search and examination done, really creates the headspace and the clarity and the lack of kind of late pressure in the transaction that creates opportunity for you to focus on, some of the other challenges that have really evolved and found their way into the process.
So Matt, if I'm going to ask everyone this, is fluid a vitamin, an aspirin, or both?
I think that it's a vitamin. We are really definitely a proactive. It's a vitamin. It's a proactive. Piece of the puzzle. It strengthens what you do. It allows you to move faster, more quickly, and it reduces errors too. I mean, we can be honest and say that the more manual process is, the more likely that errors will be introduced. The more that we can automate the process following very well understood and well, time tested rules for how to examine title, a program is going to follow those rules every single time. It's not going to take shortcuts. It's not going to skip a step. And so, I definitely think of us more, as vitamin in that metaphor.
So is it an automated, I want to boil this down a little further, essentially an automated search capability that then comes back into the title production software? And if so, how would that differ from, going into one of the underwriter resources or sending, an outside, searcher to the county, courthouse to start to review film and cups?
Yeah, it's so it automates. Our verification title is built on our decision engine, which does automate the absolute search process. Not only looking at public record type of data, but really triangulating additional data sources that again have become available and put online, and that can really strengthen the process, guide that more traditional search. Make sure that things aren't missed, see the gaps, because we are bringing together multiple data sources and triangulating them into this broader view. So it not only automates that kind of search process, but then it runs the data that's collected through classic underwriter approved examination rules, and actually produces everything you need to type out a commitment. And because we're going to both traditional and non-traditional data sources, the decision engine produces, essentially also the equivalent of like a seller's affidavit, within a minute or two of opening. So again, instead of having to wait days or a week for, to get information back from a seller, it allows you to produce a cleaner commitment much more quickly. But that's really just even at the opening of title, which is what you asked about. But because of how efficient and and fast and low cost, the procedure can be, it allows you to even do that process again at the time of a listing agreement or the time of a loan application, and get that information and that clarity up to your customer, who's bringing you the business early in their process, which allows them to optimize their workflow, and then creates a connection and a stickiness to make sure that that not only do you obviously win that title order for that particular transaction, but you've created a very high level of customer service for that customer so that they continue to come back to you in the future.
Yeah, it's almost a listing pack or a listing search, we would call it, kind of at the title level. So I'll put you on the spot. Fluid runs something. The title agent relies on that to examine and prepare the commitment. If something was missed, is that recognized by the underwriter at equal weight as if we were running through one of their core services, or how does that play?
Yeah. So, and in fact, thanks for bringing it back to that, because you did ask about how this compares or contrasts to underwriter, provided solutions, and Fluid's engine is approved by 16 of the top underwriters. Absolutely. One of the things that's nice about an agent using Fluid Decision is it allows for a uniform workflow regardless of what paper you're writing on. And historically, it's obviously been important for independent agents to have the flexibility to work with multiple underwriters, but that can become challenging if you have to have a different workflow depending on whose paper you're writing on. The Fluid Decision Engine allows, is a universal tool approved by 16 of the top underwriters, so that you can have a unified workflow regardless of which underwriter's paper you're writing on. And yes, the underwriters absolutely back our decision. We've done a countless number of file reviews with these underwriters that have approved the engine, and they've approved it for a reason. There's nothing about the Fluid Decision Engine and the way that it examines those data sources it pulls together that is a black box. We follow very, very, classic and approved underwriter guidelines for how to examine title. That's why it's approved by all these underwriters, because they can understand the way the rules are firing and the output that comes together. The decision that we produce includes all of those kind of references back to why decisions were made. It's not just a black box decision.
So when it comes back, would an examiner have to re-examine the search, or do you start typing in codes and issuing the commitment?
It depends on how the result comes back. The decision is very much a workflow tool in that respect. So a high percentage of decisions come back where exactly like you said, all you have to do is really enter that onto a commitment. Put in your codes and produce your commitment using the full output of the decision. Sometimes it'll come back, suggesting that this file be assigned to a more senior examiner. Not that additional data needs to be pulled, but someone needs to look through, the result and make sure, they're understanding and putting this file on the right path. Maybe there's a more complicated curative item that was found. And then sometimes, some smaller percentage of deals do require further searching. And so those will come back, indicating as much, but providing a guided path for where, there's gaps in the search and how those need to be filled, whether they're on the consumer side, on the property side, and specifically what to look for. So that can even, optimize the workflow of that further search.
In commercial, residential, it doesn't matter. Any type of
definitely focused on residential, single owner properties type scenarios. But who knows what the future holds.
All right, got it. But refi, purchase money in the residential space.
That's another thing that we've really focused on at Fluid in terms of this thought of verification of title is really the tool. Title should be checked at all the kind of classic transactional points, whether that be purchase, whether it be refi, whether it be taking out a second or home equity loan, whether it be lost mit on the loan servicer side or loan modifications or, capital markets, all the times where people really need to be aware of the condition of title in order to make a decision or execute a real estate transaction are all things that the decision engine supports very intentionally.
Got it. Awesome. Any final recommendations? We're going to pivot. I love this. What I like about this is the multiple and disparate data sources that are coming together to try to solve for the piece in the search and examination puzzle and taking the human element out of it. And I believe we're in a world, especially as it relates to title, frankly, outside of commercial, honestly, in our title operation, nobody really cares. There's bigger issues right now. There's inventory issues, there's loan rates, there's wire fraud, am I even dealing with the seller that's selling this piece of property? Is my data secure? I mean, and I'm not reducing in any way the value of the title insurance, but what we're really paid for and the calories burned on a deal falls outside in a lot of ways the title commitment and is much more in the coordination, closing, and funding side of it right now.
I couldn't agree more, and that's exactly the point that, if I was going to leave with one point in this phase of the discussion, is that those things that require human capital and energy to get right are the things where you should be spending your time and energy. There is a ready to use solution that can take title search and exam down to a minute or two of work on the vast majority of your files. Why spend time doing that operation when you absolutely need to be doing and spending time on, the things that you mentioned.
Yep. Agreed. Matt, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, you're up. We're going to switch to just the challenge that we have in the industry around identity. And I think this is an agnostic problem, frankly. I think identity in the world of, an expanded digital footprint, especially post-COVID, remote work in sessions like this, where normally we'd have to fly somewhere and meet at a conference and sit around a really small, awkwardly small stage together. This is the world we're in right now. So as you think about identity, because we speak to the evolution of, yes, I have a 2.5 inch by 3 inch piece of plastic that suggests this is my driver's license and it's me. But I was speaking yesterday in front of several hundred brokers and agents here locally in Grand Rapids that we're moving from the piece of plastic or the passport to, is it really the Chris that I'm looking for? Because seller impersonation, I think, really has propelled this thought process around the whole notary ceremony and signing are two strangers meeting each other for the first time. One has this piece of plastic, and all of a sudden that's just this 100% trust layer that gets laid down on the closing table. And now we can sign and drive this closing in the next 10 minutes, and they get a wire transfer after. And they know that, meaning the fraud community, and they're exploiting that on a regular basis. So with that intro, I'll stop talking. And Chris, what is involved in establishing an identity as we think about it?
Yeah, and I think what you shared is, Tom, is it spot on. The days of just physically looking at either that piece of plastic or even an image. I mean, I just purchased a piece of property in another state last year, and I was, hey, just send us an image of your ID. And that was really all there was to it. So it's really moving beyond those manual reviews. And I like what Matt was saying. It's about the different data sources that are now available. Again, what we do is help make sure that that piece of plastic or that identity is in fact genuine, because the fakes that are out on the market that the criminals use from overseas are of such high quality, even law enforcement officials cannot tell by looking at them. They have the holograms. They use the same plastic that the DMVs use. I mean, the same inks. They have the signatures. We have 28 state law enforcement agencies that use us in the field, even though they can run an ID through dispatch, because they can no longer tell looking at it. And these are trained law enforcement. So when you think about that and then go, well, how is any type of associate or employee supposed to be able to look and tell? It's really impossible to do. And because the criminals now are using data that's available from the dark web, it's, Last year alone, 353 million records were breached again online, and this has been ongoing since 2017. Criminals no longer have to try to make up an identity. All they need to do is go online, find someone that has a 700 credit score or higher. They can get their name, driver's license number, date of birth, social security, all their account information. They are now impersonating that person as long as they have a fake ID that has that victim's information on it, but it has their picture on it. That's how easy it is for them. And then when you have the issue where IDs, these fake IDs are really hard when you look at them to distinguish, is it real or genuine or fake? That's where the problem is. And so the impersonation due to the data that's available on the dark web, and that's why I like what Matt was saying, you now have to start pulling from multiple data sources. Even what we do, is the ID real? Now we use authoritative data sources instead of just looking at the image of the ID or looking at the ID through a photo. There are things that we're able to tell directly from our relationships with the agencies that produce those IDs that help us provide more accuracy and trust. But then it goes beyond that, especially in this world, like you said, where no one's doing these things in an office anymore. A lot of the time it's being done remotely. Now there's additional things that can be provided, additional data sources around, can you trust that that person owns that ID? Even if it's a valid ID, do they actually own that? And that's where some different things with biometrics, facial selfie can come in. But then other things about where are they coming from? If they're supposed to be doing the transaction in Florida, but their IP shows they're in California, that could be a flag. If the device is a suspicious device, it's had a SIM card swap or, suspicious behavior on it. There's different things and different data sources now that criminals do not have access to that can be part of that comprehensive, trusting the identity of someone that you're trying to do business with. Doing all this without trying to make your good customers feel like fraudsters because you're putting them through such a friction-filled process at the same time.
Yeah, I think you can. A couple things I want to pull threads on there. We were on an Alta webinar with the former founder of the Global Investigative Operations Center at the U.S. Secret Service. And he had mentioned that a full profile right now is selling for about 4 cents on the dark web.
Yeah.
A full profile. So, and
I
was on spring break last week. I got an alert because I have Norton, and they said, I don't know if any of you on the session or either of U.S. panelists got this, but it said the AT&T breach that went back to 2021 just got republished back on the dark web. And then it gave me a run out of essentially all these, logins that could be, exposed. And thankfully I'd done something about that in the initial one, but it's like, okay, they resold the list, 21 million. So I think we're in a world, and you probably agree, Chris, that if you do not believe your credentials are out there for cents on the dollar, then you're going to find out one way or another that you're wrong because they are out there. We had a seller impersonation scam where they actually, and we ran that through. We're actually going to do a TCAF on this, I think next month or the month after. Unbelievably sophisticated. And they had the gentleman's full profile. The mail away package came back in with a social number. Federal law enforcement said, I don't know how, but this is actually his ID, but it's not his picture.
Yeah.
It's his ID. So.
Yeah. The data, I can't remember who said this now, but it's not a matter as will your identity, will your PII get released on the dark web? It's already there. It's how many times is it going to be used against you? Or if you're, in the business of with customers, how many times are you going to allow your customers' data to be used? They're not making up information. That takes a longer process to do a true synthetic identity, recreate from multiple IDs. It's when they can just pull this data from all these breaches. It's just readily available. And the thing is, the fraudsters know that those are the traditional tools being used. Hey, just check the social security number, check the driver's license number, check to see if there's anything that's hit any of the, credit reporting agencies. The problem is when these criminals purchase this information and they then create these identities, again, that has their picture on it with someone else's factual information, the data matches up. But then also no one is really brought into it from an alerting standpoint until the true victim understands, usually 30, 60 days later that, hey, something's happened. by then they've moved on to a new, record that they purchased for less than, like you said, it can be from 4 cents to $100 total between all the data they need and the ID they need to walk in or remotely impersonate that victim.
Yeah, and they actually opened a bank account up at a large bank in the name of the property owner, so that if a wire had gone and there was a callback verification, the bank would have said, "Sure, that's John Doe's account. Send the money, no problem." How is AI continuing to change the landscape is probably a better way to phrase that question.
Yeah, I think you're right in continuing, because it has been for a while now, but everyone between the different AIs that are available and how readily available they are, which is even scarier, just how instant you can have information. You can have a video created instantly. You can have an image of a driver's license created instantly, all through AI. That is, again, more to it's causing an issue for the traditional services that all they're doing is verifying images. They're just making sure that, hey, this looks genuine. This looks to be like an ID from Florida, or this looks to be a passport from, it has everything that looks correct. The difference is you need to deploy solutions that are no longer just looking at images. They're actually digging into the data behind those images to make sure, hey, let's make sure, even though it's an image of an ID, was that an ID that was captured live during a process or was just uploaded? AI gives these criminals the ability, especially if some systems out there are a little lazy, hey, just upload anything and we're going to trust it, versus no, even during the process of you doing that, let's say ID verification, we're going to do these checks during that process to make sure that's a live image. It's not a photo. It's not something that was just reproduced, that they've got a photo of something laying on their countertop on their sink. And even the selfie facial biometrics that can go into play. There's ways of preventing the AI attacks that take place, but it does take additional ways of doing those checks at the same time, instead of just upload something and we're going to look at it and tell you if we think it's right or not.
So I'm going to summarize that as, with AI, it's going to get harder and harder to detect whether or not an identity document or piece of identity credentialing is something that's authentic versus something that's been created and potentially tampered with.
Exactly. And the criminals, they're going to have more readily available access to these IDs and these images as well, because they can just create them while they're sitting in their living room instead of waiting for something to ship from overseas.
So IntelliCheck, a vitamin, aspirin, or both?
Yeah, when you asked Matt that, I was thinking, oh, what is that? So definitely a vitamin from the proactive approach. But then I would almost say, part aspirin as well, because we usually come in with a client, whether it's a big bank or it's we have title agencies across the country now, whatever it may be, banks. It's because they have a big issue and they're trying to prevent the headache of additional fraud. So I say it in the vitamin, because if we're implementing that very first step of the process before you start doing all those additional traditional data checks, let's just make sure that who you're running those data checks on is actually who you're dealing with, either on the other side of the screen or the other side of the desk. That's the vitamin approach. The aspirin approach, though, is, hey, if there's a big fraud issue that's taking place and you need to stop the bleeding, we can be very easily and seamlessly plugged in to prevent that going forward as well.
And I asked the question this way, guys, and I'll ask it I'll respond it with CertifID as well, is aspirin outsells vitamins by an exponential amount, because your body reminds you need an aspirin. Your body doesn't remind you that you need a vitamin, right?
That's right.
And the ounce of prevention here in all of our solutions, I believe, are heavily geared towards vitamin, right? And it should be. But those are the ones that are easy not to take. There's no reminder. And the threat isn't until, again, the doctor's office, which is the incident that is leading now to say, okay, something has to change in my life. And what recommendations do you have? So, Chris, what kind of keeps you up at night, or as you go in kind of post-incident, what are some of the common denominators that we could get benefit right now as an industry as it relates to identity?
And I think the first thing is knowledge. I'm very passionate about sharing why this even takes place. There's a lot of misinformation that's out there about why identity theft takes place. I think it goes back to educating one another and then being willing to share data. When I mean share data, share how are you stopping this? What are successful ways to put a dent in this? Because if everyone thinks the criminals are not very well organized and not highly motivated to stay in front of the tools that are being thrown out there, they're not understanding what's taking place. These are, while they're criminals, it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry, and they are very coordinated. Traditionally, what we've seen is everyone wants to kind of do their own solution and not share success of how they're preventing it. And this is an issue that it's going to require more of a sharing of information and educating, but then at the same time attacking some of the misinformation that, hey, as long as that ID has the hologram or that ID looks real, you're good. There are additional things that everyone needs to be educated on at the same time.
No, I agree. And I stood in front of that large group yesterday morning, and they were all agents and brokers. And I said, especially as it relates to vacant property, you have to assume you're not dealing with the actual property owner until you do, until you're able to probably verify it, in what does that look like? So, awesome, Chris. All right, Sean, really I'm not excited. I'm excited, but I'm nervous about this conversation, Sean, because of what we've shared the last few weeks, but it's been a rough 6 to 12 months, right? And what Chris mentioned about identity breaches and the continued republishing that data, where do we sit today? And I mean, how do we think about this? And I mean that in a very genuine way, because some days it just feels like IT and cybersecurity and all this is just a black hole of working cap where money gets flushed down. No news is good news, but yet you hear mortgage servicers and underwriters and hospitals and people that are not negligent at all, people that have invested millions and millions of dollars in infrastructure, in security layers, are still compromised. And sometimes, and again, I'm an optimist, sometimes it just feels like, or it can feel like, well, if they want to come, they're going to come. So I'm going to just, with that preface, and I'm being a little bit transparent, but it does, right? And I can't be the same, industry participant that maybe feels that way from time to time when you hear about a data breach essentially every other day now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm at the Forest conference right now. There's a lot of good conversations going on. But one of the things is, I joke, but it's also kind of true, is I basically just live in a state of paranoia. I live in a world where there's a new buzzword that's been going around in the cybersecurity space of zero trust. There is a zero trust mentality that we have adopted and that we are implementing. And, we are taking the position that, everything needs to be verified. What Chris is talking about, every aspect of it needs to be verified. Do you have control access in place? How are the users set up? But at the end of the day, like when you're looking at threats or trends, still to this day, spear phishing and phishing campaigns are the leading cause of getting into your environments. And that's, so what we focus on a lot is to create that security culture within the company. And that starts at the person sitting at the desk. We can put in 100 different layers of security, right? But at the end of the day, if that user sitting at a desk just enters in their credentials and doesn't verify where these things are coming from, those security layers just get broken down one by one by one. And, Tom, what you and I were talking about, and I kind of shared with you what I saw at the security conference I was just recently at, is how fast they can get past your credentials. There's free tools out on the web right now that will harvest your MFA token. They'll send you to a fake landing page. They'll get in within 15 seconds, they are in control of your account and moving laterally within your environment. That's how fast it is. And they're organizations, that person that did that phishing campaign got access to it. Once they got access to it, they've either already made that sale for that data, Or now that they're in there, they're going to make that sale, and then they're going to move on to a different account. And now they've handed off to the other aspect of that criminal organization. And, you know, you hear it, it's true. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And do you have enough systems in place to stop it from becoming a systemic event? And, you know, I'll answer your question right out of the gate. Are we a vitamin or an aspirin? We are both. You know, if you do it the right way from the beginning and build out the right infrastructure, it's that is a vitamin. You just feel secure. It helps you sleep at night. And that's ultimately the goal, is you want to protect your data. Data is king in the title world. But we're also the aspirin, because we get it. There's a cost that comes with the spend on this security stack. And one of the eye-opening things to me that I saw in the last this last conference I went to was all the different vendors out there selling. And you still have to vet out those vendors just like you would any other third party. Because even though there's companies out there promoting zero trust applications, there's no real product out there. There might be down the road within like a year and a half or so, but zero trust is a philosophy. It's not a product. Zero trust is making sure you are verifying everything that's in your environment, verifying every user, verifying every movement that's within your environment. But also, you know, you see some of these vendors, some of them are vaporware. Some of them aren't actually doing anything. They're just trying to get in that space. So are you throwing your money to a vendor that's actually really not doing anything for you? So, you know, my position always is vet it out. You know, for us especially, we sit there and look at our vendors, and just because we're using one right now doesn't mean we're going to be using them in 3 months. You know, and we've done that. We've changed out, you know, our email filtering systems. We changed out how we've done our backups, you know, and it's, you know, there's certain things, you know, our backup solution at the one time, like all of a sudden all of our SQL servers and all of our environments just started locking up for no reason. And it was because of the backup system that was running, because there was an acquisition of that company. So during that acquisition, something got screwed up. So we had to make a fundamental change in our security stack on the back end to make sure that you are, you know, that your data is actually being backed up and real-time backup. So, you know, you can sit, what are the recent threats or trends? You know, there's also, you know, the AI trend is real. Sitting here at the conference yesterday, you know, they did a demonstration of all AI generated, you know, got a picture from LinkedIn, created a picture, created fake New York Times articles, recreated the voice from a podcast that she was on, and it was literally done within seconds. And, you know, so those are the trends that you need to be aware of. How fast is AI progressing in the cybersecurity world? But at the end of the day, still your phishing emails and your spear phishing are the leading cause of what is getting into your environment, especially in the title world, because it's such an email heavy industry that you just need to train your front end employees on some simple tools and tricks and what tips that you need to do, and just make sure they're trained and continuously train them, because it is evolving ever so fastly.
What should we be asking? One, if you don't have an IT team, you have to be working with Sean or someone with the sophistication of Sean and his team. I can tell you that right now. We're moving beyond, I can email and print from my computer and that's IT success, because we're in a whole different world here, guys.
That's still IT success. I'm just going to let you know.
Fair enough. But even within security, there's so many different niche disciplines. And to your point, Sean, you're essentially at an industry conference every time we connect. Yeah. That gives me confidence that, again, I mentioned you guys, you know, you guys bleed for the industry, but you're all very curious because you're up to date. And that's what, from a security stat perspective, and you know, either a fractional, you know, CIO or CISO that, you know, Sean and his team can provide, you just have to have that type of insight. But what should business, if there's one or two questions that I want to put you on the hot seat on, Sean,
yep,
that the audience could ask their IT provider right now that would be super relevant, and one or two questions to ask themselves that would allow them to lower the risk of phishing and spear phishing, because that means that we're getting it wrong as meat suits in front of computers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, what should you be asking? I mean, I can go through a litany of things, but I just brought up is your backups. You have an IT company. Again, I talked to a title company yesterday, and as a CEO, and I asked him like, "Who do you use for your IT provider?" He goes, "I don't know." I'm like, I go, "Well, you should know that." I mean, that's like fundamentally, it's like, well, I have people that do that. I go, "Yeah, that's different now. You need to know who your IT provider is." And then I obviously have a follow-up question which is what is your security stack? But based off of that first answer, I knew he wasn't going to have that second answer for me. And so those are the questions. When was the last time, go to your IT provider, go to your internal IT person. When was the last time your backups were actually tested? When, data is king in the title world. And if you're sitting there and you don't have the answer to that question right now, then you need to go find the answer to that question immediately. We provide reports of real-time backups. If somebody called me right now, I can give them download a report and here's all your backups. And this is where it failed to one day and this is where it recovered and came back up. So that would be my first thing is, do you have a recent version of your backups? When was the last time they were tested? Can you spin those backups? Can you spin all that data back up in a timely manner? But then the next question I would look at is, the security stack. Ask your IT vendor what they are using for an EDR solution and an MDR solution. So EDR is endpoint detection and response, and MDR is managed detection and response with a SOC, which is a security operations center. If you're using Microsoft 365, if you have your IT vendor provides, if they set it up the right way, Business Premium comes with an EDR already included in it. So you're not having to spend more money. So that's the other part of this is if you talk to a good IT company, you should be the vitamin. We should review those licenses, what you're already paying for, to see what other licensing you can get for it. What else, we go in 90% of the time when we log into somebody's tenant and look at their 365 licensing, they don't have Defender turned on and they're already paying for it.
Yeah.
So those are simple things that I would look for is check your backups. Everybody in title needs their backups, legacy backups as well. So I have not met one title company that has just ran one production software. Usually they're running a live one and then they have a legacy data somewhere else. So make sure that that's all there that you need it. And if you needed to recover it, you could, but also look at your security stack and make sure that you have an idea of where it is and then start budgeting.
And then what about on the people side quickly? What do we do to de-risk the phishing, spear phishing?
That's a simple one. We use a product called Fin. There's another one out there called Know Before. There is no magic pill for that one, Tom. That is you and your four walls of your company have to create that security culture and have your employees aware that you are the first line of defense. Hopefully we don't have to use all the other tools behind us, because if you are, as you say, you're that meat suit sitting in that chair, train. Make them aware of what's going on and make them, as Chris will tell you on the front end of this, is the verification side. I just went through a training yesterday and it was all about seller impersonation. And so, how do I train myself in order to see the red flags? Is there a sense of urgency sitting there? Something feels off, trust your gut. If something feels off, it's probably off.
I agree. And I think the culture does start from the top, and you have to provide a bandwidth essentially for all these solutions that we're talking about. So if something comes back from Matt's solution and it doesn't seem right, well, that's where we have our talent sitting there to address in open a spillway, to do the curative, right? To do the analysis, right? Chris has a product and something doesn't feel right. Don't rush it. Take that as a strong cue. Sean, to your point, you're saying backups. The reason why he's saying that, guys, is the backup is the antidote to ransomware and having to spend all of your liquidity that ends up overseas in some crack in cryptocurrency. I mean, that's why he's saying that. And he's saying, the other layers, so that if there is a breach or some penetration, even if it's small, in the wall of security, that they can rapidly detect and contain that. So it doesn't act as a full virus that takes the system out. I mean, that's the level of technology at scale that system-wide we have. But if we don't have a culture where we're educating and encouraging and applauding. I can't tell you the number of times a day, at least twice a day, I'll have someone from our disbursement or commercial team asking me about an edge case on a wire every single day. And we created CertifID due to a wire fraud. And I said, every time I end the conversation, I say this to my employee: thank you, keep them coming. Your gut is telling you the right thing. There's nothing here, or we'll work it out. And then we share that with the org to say, hey, Daniel or Beth or whoever brought this case up, and this is why they were concerned. This is how we worked it through. If you have something similar, still raise it, because we want to run the traps on it, but we use it as a learning. You have to build the muscle memory and applaud the fact that, yeah, is it a business interruption during the day? Yes. Does it terrify me when my head of disbursements walks into my office? Yes. Right. But that's okay. And I think that's where the culture is built. All right. What's on the horizon? I just want to quickly wrap with just some key takeaways from a consumer standpoint. Our annual State of Wire Fraud from CertifID, this is a report where we gather data about what industry participants have seen relative to wire fraud in their transactions. And in the 2024 report, the most recent one that came out, was the first time that we got meaningful consumer data. And I think this is the one, and I shared this again, and you should be sharing that out with your referral partners and your board of real estate agents, and the lender associations that you have, and the bar associations, because consumers, essentially half of them, when I say not aware, they're really not meaningfully aware that there is a risk of wire fraud. So when our recovery services team engages a consumer, in almost every single case, they say, I didn't even know this was a thing. Well, that's just not acceptable. And I think we have an obligation to train the trainer here, right? It's the real estate agent, it's the lender that has the first point of contact. And that point of contact should seed the level of education, and we're able to pick that up and pull that through all the way to a fully engaged consumer in closing. I think that's what success looks like. This is not necessarily success. We're doing better, because if we did this 3 years ago, 25% would have been aware, not 50%, right? So we're getting there, but we got some work to do. Secondly, well, whose responsibility is it? Is this a DIY situation as a consumer, or am I expecting my paid professionals to help me with this? And overwhelmingly, they're saying, look, I don't have any experience in the real estate transaction, or even if I have bought my house, I've been in here for an average of 12 years now. So I'm assuming everything is new. Isn't that why I hired you? Why wouldn't somebody walk me through? If I learned so much about a well and septic system, don't you think it mindful that I would be interested in how to protect my life savings? Probably, right? So we're responsible. And I think, again, recruiting the real estate agent to help you in that process is important. Our fraud recovery services team published data in the report as well. And I just wanted to do a quick cast of, this is essentially the uninsured risk that you're carrying on your books on a transaction by transaction basis. And I'm saying it that directly, because there is no meaningful insurance coverage outside of what we're offering for CertifID for wire fraud protection, because a lot of it is going to fall outside of either a breach of standard operating procedure or no coverage at all on the part of like a buyer sending funds. The average loss that we took in last year from victims that called our recovery services team to help, this wasn't because CertifID failed, this was outside of our ecosystem. They're coming in asking for the vitamin that will take away the pain. $72,000 loss, about a $70,000 loss either side, and that tracks your average existing home price and conventional mortgage and equity levels. But you can see how low the percentage rates are of recovery, because smaller amounts are harder to recover. They just are. We confirmed that in yesterday's Alta webinar. The money moves super fast. The rails of money laundering have been more sophisticated, and they're tighter now with cryptocurrency, and it's going to get worse with real-time payment. So need the vitamin. The outsized risk is our mortgage payoffs, guys. If you're not on Payoff Protect, I know many of you are, because you're You're on this call today as a certified customer. Payoff protect, instant validation, similar to what Matt's doing on the title side and Chris is doing on the identity side and Sean's doing on the platform side. All these technologies provide insights that you might not have visibility to. And then the stack, I guess I want to just kind of wrap with this, and then we can take questions, or guys, we can do some quick final thoughts. There is no silver bullet. I'm not a technologist by nature, but I have learned to love and learn to see the value and insights of technology that actually works and makes people and processes better. I think technology can amplify good or bad processes one way or another. So education by far number one. Why we do these webinars? While Matt's at a conference and Chris and Sean, everyone is big on education. Internally, your internal customer, your employees, and your external customer, your vendor partners, your referral partners, and buyers and sellers. Any technology, and I think, Sean, you make a good point. There's a lot of noise in the technology space, right? Everybody thinks they can just program a quick app or widget and it's going to solve all the problems, right? Matt, you've been knocking on your data set in the platform, and we've been obsessing about ours now, going back to 2017, and it takes a minute, but there are real software solutions that you guys should look into if you haven't already, to provide those lift points and those layers of security. Quickly, if you do not have an incident response plan, then you're going to have a tough go when something happens. That's all I'm going to say. Especially as it relates to wire fraud, for those that you may be banking with, smaller credit unions or regional or community banks, some of them just don't have the rails or formal fraud departments to even know what to do on how to report a fraud to a large money center bank that received your wire on the mortgage payoff. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phones with community bank presidents, walking them through how to issue a fraud alert and a hold harmless to a large bank. And that's just time that we don't have. You have to run that incident response in advance. You have to have a well-defined protocol of who's in charge, all the contact information, the red phone to Sean or his incident response team, all of that well in advance. And Alta has a great framework. Sean and I are both on the InfoSec subcommittee there. We've worked a lot on Alta's incident response plan. It's a great guide to get started. And then insurance. Your insurance carrier is the one or agent that might take you out to golf or lunch. You need to get to the underwriter. You need to start asking direct questions about risk profiles and point to me in the insurance agreement where I'm covered or not. And then if there's conditions to that coverage, make sure that your standard operating procedures can meet those every single time. We're in the process of analyzing court cases around the country. And it's interesting how many title companies have tried to go after their insurance companies for denial of coverage. And they simply point back and say, yeah, you may have made the phone call, but you didn't document it. Denied coverage. Or some little nuance in a conditions precedent or requirement to coverage. So, guys, I can't thank you enough. Let me look for questions here. Any parting thoughts? I'm excited. I'm always excited to see you guys, but I'm excited for all the work that you're doing for and with the industry as an industry participant, but also as a participant on the technology side. CertifID is both a vitamin and an aspirin. We have the insights that go far beyond, similar to what Chris is saying, far beyond pieces of plastic. And we can show things and provide risk scoring on metadata and device ID and things, geolocation that you just wouldn't know. And we do it within milliseconds to set you up for success. We're also an aspirin on the back end because we have such a unique relationship with federal law enforcement. There's no quicker path in my mind from learning of a wire fraud to finding out and freezing accounts where money had been transferred, even subsequent transfers, than what we've created with our fraud recovery services team. So with that, guys, let us know your feedback. So a survey is going to come out, but some parting thoughts, guys.
My only suggestion is just look into an MDR and SOC. And why do you look into that? And what is it? Managed detection and response, a company out of Charlotte, 53 devices, about 40 employees, 53 devices. In 1 month, they had over 1.3 billion events attack their devices. With the MDR, responded to 6,800 of them. And with the MDR in place, there were 0 incidents. So that's the level of attacks that are happening onto your company. So look into MDR and SOC as an application for your company.
Smart. Matt?
Take your vitamins. I'm gonna latch on to your metaphor. There's no vaccine, there's no silver bullet. So take your vitamins, educate yourself like you're doing by being here today. Use the tools that are available, to make your life easier, because there's real work to do to stay on top of this, to Sean's point, and I'm glad we're all here sharing information. Like Chris said, that's really the only way we can continue to push this back.
Yeah, stop searching title records, use Fluid, and do more high impact work. Right?
Yep.
Chris, what about yourself?
I don't even know how to follow up with that. I agree to everything. I think it's about education, continuing the conversation. Awareness is critical, and then not allowing the criminals to have it easy by just using the procedures and processes that have been used forever, because that's what they're counting on. We've got to be able to adapt as much as they do when they commit these crimes.
No, 100%. Gentlemen, appreciate all of you. Can't thank the clients on the phone enough for your support of CertifID, our team, the trust that you put in us each day. I'll speak for the group to say there is just simply not a team on the planet that obsesses more about wire fraud and the issues that wire fraud presents to our title and law firm partners. So with that, guys, we'll sign off. And thanks again for the time. Stay safe.
Thanks everyone.
Yep.
Bye.